We're inside the T-Mobile Center. It is beautiful inside here, very well set up. And we are joined now by Big 12 Commissioner Bob Bowlsby, who's in his 11th season as commissioner. And Bob, we welcome you to the set. Thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure to be here, and hearing 11 years come out of your mouth makes me ponder a little bit. Doesn't seem like it's been that long.
Well, there's certainly some big changes ahead in the Big 12. As we know, Oklahoma and Texas are headed to the SEC, but the Big 12 is expanding. You're going to invite BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF to join the conference. Can you give us a sense of what that timeline looks like?
Well, we don't know just yet. We know that BYU will be coming in 2023 for the 23-24 season, and I think the expectation is that the others will try and do likewise. So we'll have all four of them for the 23-24 basketball season, but they still have obligations to the AAC, and they're going to have to extricate themselves from those prior to the time that they can make a commitment.
And so, you know, another big topic that's going on right now with the student athletes is the NIL. And you and I talked about that actually coming a couple of years ago when we spoke at Media Day 2 years ago. What does the conference role in helping to support the institutions and their support of the student athletes with that?
Well, NIL, I was intimately involved in it, and would have liked to have seen a few more guardrails put around it so that we had a little more structure. Ultimately, for reasons that were mostly due to litigation avoidance, we chose not to put restrictions in, because it seems like every time we put a restriction in place, we get sued over it. And so it's a little bit of the wild, wild west. But then, you know, July 1st came and went, and the sky didn't fall. We're still playing games, and we're still doing the things that we've always done. And so I think it's kind of turned out as I expected that it might. There are a few kids that are very active in the space, and some of them are making a lot of money. There are the majority that are kind of dabbling around with it and trying to see what it entails and how big they ought to jump in. And then there are some that are just busy enough and far enough down in the bench or in the roster that they're not spending much time trying to activate around their NIL. But it's going to evolve over time, and I think one of the things that we all agreed with is that student athletes ought to be represented. And so many of them have agents, and they have people that are assisting them. Sometimes it's family members. Some, I guess, are probably getting good advice, and some are not getting good advice. We've seen some situations where all of a sudden somebody signs a big contract and then they find themselves on the bench, and you wonder about the thinking that goes into that when somebody spends six figures or seven figures in some cases, and they're all of a sudden it doesn't quite work out. And so anyway, I think we're still in a wait and see period. We're just 4 months into it, and it certainly has been interesting. I continue to believe that we will find some national legislation through federal sources where we get some consistency. I think having a patchwork of 50 state laws is not likely to work very well, and so we're just going to have to wait and see and be patient.
And we'll, like you said, we'll kind of see how that evolves. But, you know, Brendan and I spent some time touching on the careers and the legacy of Kim Mulkey and Sherry Cole. You certainly had plenty of time to spend with them in the coaching role and also, you know, off the court as well. What stands out to you most about their careers?
Oh, gosh, those two are iconic in so many ways. And, you know, I think about Kim in the last 2 minutes of the national championship game a couple of years ago. She has one of her best players go down, and Notre Dame was roaring back. And she was a picture of composure on the sideline. And I think that, for me, is what sticks out in my mind. Now, you know, she can be crazy on the sideline, and she has been on occasion, but she is one of the best of all times. And Sherry is as different in style as she could possibly be from Kim, and yet in her own way she had extraordinary success. And the loss of both of them to our league, one to retirement and one to moving home to her home state. Those are both big losses for us, and there isn't any question about it. And I had great relationships with both of them. I'm very fond of both of them, but they couldn't be any more different in terms of the way they approach coaching their teams and the way they recruit. And so you don't just replace those people, and their successors are coming into difficult situations. The bars are high. The expectations are very high.
You know, we're here in Kansas City, but Kansas City was to host the women's basketball championship for the first time in many years 2 years ago, and COVID happened and everything shut down the day of the Big 12 championship. Last year we had limited fans in attendance, so this really is the year that Kansas City can embrace the Big 12 championship being here. What are you most looking forward to with that?
Well, I would like to see us have the absence of masks in the venue. Obviously, we had good competition last year, and that's fundamental to it. We have to make sure that the student athletes have a great experience regardless of what we're going through. It was surreal 2 years ago when we ended up having to cancel the tournaments in the 11th hour, and so you know, I'm glad that in some ways we appear to be a little bit on the backside of COVID. There are some indications, and that's a good thing. We keep our fingers crossed. But yeah, this is a big celebration for us. It's a great period of time for Kansas City. We're excited about the beginning of the basketball season, and just a tiny bit still not entirely confident that we're going to get through a sports season. You know, none of us are prepared to declare victory.
Right. Well,
you just can't say, well, we're on the backside of COVID and let's go back to normal. And that hasn't been our lot in life, and I don't think it's going to be. But we're here in Kansas City. We've got the women's media day today, the men's tomorrow morning. The basketball season's going to start soon, and the ball's going to go up in the air.
You're looking forward to it.
I am too.
Absolutely. And really, when you talk about women's basketball, the growth of the game has been absolutely tremendous on the college side, even in the WNBA side. As you look at the 11 years that you've spent in this conference, what growth and what changes have you seen?
Well, it's been all of what you've had to say. I think our teams get better and better. I mean, we had two teams in the regional finals last year, and you know, because we didn't have a team in the Final Four, you'd wonder if people wouldn't call it an unsuccessful year, and certainly it wasn't. We've had lots of Hall of Fame coaches and still have them in our conference. I just think that the game gets better and better. Right prior to the time I was with the Big 12, I spent 7 years at Stanford and had the pleasure of going to 4 Final Fours with Tara Vanderveer and her team. Never had the pleasure of coming home with a championship. So I'm very fond of the game and very fond of the people who coach it and the young women who play it. And we have terrific players and coaches in our league, and that's what makes it fun. And that's why it's going to continue to grow. That's why the league can live through the loss of Kim Mulkey and the loss of Sherry Cole, because there are good replacements and there are great people that were here when they decided to move on. And so I expect that the game will continue to grow.
And it also takes a big investment, from the conference as well. So I want to thank you for that. And also thank you, Commissioner Bowlsby, for joining us on set. We appreciate you taking the time to spend with us. And coming up next, Brenda's going to sprint over to head to our coaches panel. We've got the first set of coaches coming up. Do not go anywhere. This is the Big 12 Women's Basketball Tip-Off Show from Kansas City.